I'm Shanley Smith. I'm a writer and fiber artist. I grew up in Michigan, right near the shore of Lake Michigan, which was a very transformative and essential environment for me growing up, being in that ecosystem, so to speak, and recently transplanted here to North Carolina. So I definitely much more consider myself a writer than a fiber artist, or I would say I'm first a writer. And fiber artistry has been new to me in the past, I guess, 2 years. And writing was with me from the get-go. I grew up in a family that was big on reading, and my mom or my dad would read to me in bed every single night growing up. And so stories were just like really integral to my childhood. And so beginning around second grade, I would write stories and then I would sit my friends down and make them listen to my stories, which they were very gracious about. And then I guess, continued on with that. I shifted into poetry when I was in college, around my sophomore year, I think. But I would say my poetry is still very narrative based. So stories and narrative work is still kind of in the picture there.
So can you talk about like a foundation of your inspiration? Like is there a person, a book, an experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a lot. I think in terms of poets that have inspired me, the two big ones that come to mind would be Ada Limon, who is the poet laureate of the United States, and then also Lauren Haldeman. I don't know quite how to put it into words, but Ada Limon writes a lot about infertility and the women's body, which infertility is not something that I myself have struggled with, but her just like writing about that side of femininity and kind of paving that way in a really honest way, writing about the body was really impactful. And then Lauren Haldeman just has this like whimsy and queerness to their writing that is, I think that was my first encounter with that in poetry and just kind of really sparked what is, I guess gave me a constellation point of representation.
So how would you say you stay motivated?
Community, I think, is the biggest one. I was just talking the other day about like, I guess the various buckets in life that keep me full, and I feel like the seasons that I have time for creativity and time for community, those are just the sweetest times in life, and I think they kind of feed into each other. So community is really huge. I am an introvert, so just having that alone time and space, and having this space of Azule has been really transformative too, to just have that breathing room to be alone with my thoughts.
So what is your typical day-to-day studio or workspace?
I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and one of the bedrooms we've transformed into a studio space for me. I also work from home, so it kind of doubles as both work from home space and studio space. I am not somebody who like gets in the studio every day and has that like 2 hours of creative time, but Fridays in my current rhythm are kind of my sacred day where it's all about creativity and whatever I feel like I need to nourish myself.
Great. And can you describe what you plan on doing while you're here at Azule?
So in the mornings I've been focusing on writing and am using that as a time to generate some new work. I've spent some time revisiting some old content, but really I just want to use this inspiring space as a time to write new poems. And then in the afternoon I've been working on the fiber-based side of things, and I'm working on 2 tapestries, and I do naturally dyed fibers. That's how I got into sewing itself, is I was really intrigued by dyeing fabric with the resources around me. And then I had all this fabric and thought I should probably make something with it. And so I'm learning how to sew. And so I'm making these two tapestries. They are all the fabrics are from things that I've dyed with that are either within like a 10-mile radius from outside of my apartment, or they're from the kitchen scraps in my home. So I'm planning on making one tapestry that's all kind of the exterior life, and then one that's all the interior life of the kitchen.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So last thing, what's the best piece of advice you've gotten as an artist? Is there anything you would like to share with other artists?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to take a second to think about that.
Yeah, take your time.
I think something that's not, I mean, it's not even directly related to creativity, but it's just kind of like a guiding piece of wisdom for me is my godfather told me when I was, I think, 13 years old, when I was like really beaten up and discouraged about something one day, and I was like tearing up a little bit, and I'm somebody who's still very prone to tears, and have like always kind of gone back and forth about being self-conscious about like how sensitive I am. And the words that he told me that day were, it takes a heart willing to be broken to help a broken world. And I think that's kind of granted me permission to engage with the sensitive side of myself. And I think that sensitivity is ultimately what allows me to be in touch with my creativity. So yeah, just like being willing to stay tender, I think, is the permission that was granted to me in those words. And I think it's a hard world for anyone out there. And it's also a hard world for artists. So just, I don't know, to grant artists that freedom of stay tender. Like you don't need to get tough. You can be a tender person and make it through this world.
Thank you.
Yeah.